if you, let's say, for example, one of your core values is family, and for you, time spent with your family is a major priority, and you have a mentor whose driving value is ambition and success, and they are therefore pushing you to work weekends and work evenings and work all hours and anything to get the job done. That's in conflict with your value of family. So the basic difference, as I see it, between a coach and a mentor is a mentor has the expertise or the experience, the insights that you lack that will help you on the journey that you've identified. So, a couple of examples.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Being Yourself show, where world's renowned thought leaders and best-selling authors share their wisdom and insight with you so that you can achieve your goals and be a better version of yourself. If you're new to this channel, you may consider subscribing. My name is Ajay Mathur, and my guest today is Andy Lopata. Andy has written 6 books on professional networking, mentorship, public speaking, to name a few. Today, we will be talking to Andy about the book he has written for Financial Times, which is called Financial Times Mentoring, a complete guide of mentoring. We'll be talking a lot about it, and we'll also try to connect dots from here to the other books that Andy has written on speaking and on networking. Andy, if you don't know him, he is a author. By now, you know that he's written 6 books, and he writes very regularly for these journals like Psychology Today, and has been in media so many times on Sunday Times and Financial Times, etc. And I think FT has said that Andy is Europe's leading business networking strategist. I think that's what they've said. And Forbes and Independent call him the true master of networking. So we'll be talking about networking and mentorship and a lot of things with him. He also runs a podcast, which is called Connected Leadership. And he's also written a book called Connected Leadership. Other books on public speaking, I think it's called Death Came Third. And his one more book is called Just Ask and Recommended. So I'm so excited to start talking to Andy and scratch his brain. Let's see what we can learn from him today. Andy, welcome to the show.
Ajay, thanks for having me on.
Right. Thank you very much. So you've written a lot of books, but let's talk about the mentorship book. Why do we need a book on mentorship? I mean, and what is new in this particular book?
Well, I think in terms of what is new is that when Ruth and I were looking for books on mentoring, there were a number of books that were great as effectively a beginner's guide. And perhaps it would be fair to say, and I don't mean this to denigrate those books, they serve a particular purpose. They scratch the surface, they give you the basics of mentoring without necessarily going more deeply. And they also tend to be more focused on the mentee, being a mentee rather than being a mentor. We wanted to write something that was much more comprehensive, that would go deeper and was there for mentors and for organizations who have mentoring programs but aren't necessarily getting value from them, getting the benefit from them, to give a resource to them. So in terms of going deeper, just a couple of examples. We interview experts on neurodivergence. How do you mentor someone who is neurodivergent? You know, I've been in that position and I would have really benefited from that advice in advance. What about imposter syndrome? Another expert on imposter syndrome. How does that impact you? If someone asks you to be their mentor, but you suffer from imposter syndrome, what, you want me? Why me? So we wanted to be able to have the scope to go a little bit more deep in that sense and to provide something a bit more comprehensive.
So why was it that most books so far written were from mentee's perspective, and what is changing now that we have to have more comprehensive, but also having focus on the mentor side of it?
Well, it's not just books.
Mm.
I was delivering a webinar yesterday for learning leaders. And one of the things that I said is that in my experience, and I've been speaking on mentoring for many years now in various guises, when I've been invited into organizations until very recently, it's been to train mentees, not mentors. I
Mm.
think there's an assumption, an unconscious assumption there, or a subconscious one. And that is that as we traditionally see mentors, they are experienced business professionals. Therefore, they know what they're doing and don't need our help and support. It might be the case that they're experienced people, may not be, because mentoring can come from all different directions. But even assuming they are, that doesn't make them experienced or good mentors. So they still need that support. But I think the focus has been more on the mentee than the mentor for maybe it's because they're more numerous, because one mentor might mentor multiple mentees. Maybe it's that unconscious assumption. Maybe there's something else there. I'm not sure, but there was definitely an issue there.
So whose responsibility it is to lead the relationship? Is it the mentee or the mentor, or how is it distributed really?
Typically, I would say it's the mentee that's responsible to drive a relationship. In many circumstances, and particularly in certain countries like the US, mentoring isn't paid for; it's voluntary. And even in a country like the UK, where mentoring is viable as a paid service, there's still a huge amount of voluntary mentoring, particularly within large organizations where senior executives are expected to give back and reverse mentoring is starting to take hold. If someone is volunteering to help you, you shouldn't also be looking to them to drive that relationship. If you're the mentee, you have to have commitment. You're the one who needs to want it to work. You're the one who stands to benefit from that relationship. So it's the mentee that really needs to focus on making sure it has impact. That doesn't remove all responsibility from the mentor. For me, if you're a mentor, you've got to take it seriously. And if you're not hearing from your mentee, if they're not reaching out to you, it's important that you reach out to them and check in with them. Is everything okay? I had to do that very recently with a mentee of mine. uh, but it's not you're not in the driving seat.
And you said that the benefits of the relationship are actually for mentee more than mentor. Then what is it there for the mentor then? Why should they
It's,
spend
it's a
time?
good question, and even halfway through, I was like, okay, it's a fair point. The purpose of the mentoring relationship in a traditional format is for the mentor to share their expertise with the mentee so the mentee can achieve a clear objective and goal. So it is set up to provide benefit to the mentee. That doesn't mean that the mentor doesn't get a benefit from that interaction, that engagement. I've always found that whether I'm a one-to-one mentor or whether I'm in a peer group where we're working through problems together, I learn as much by trying to process, reflect on, come up with solutions for someone else's challenge as I do for my own. So it's a learning process for me as well, and it's a key part of my development is the support I give other people. So there is that positive output for the mentor as well. Just think, how often in a busy working week do you get to think back to the lessons that you've learned from what's gone before? And that's what mentoring does. It forces you to think back, well, how did I approach that? And how did that work for me? So that reflection is a huge value to the mentor, but it doesn't stop there. Uh, and again, it depends on the scenario, the context. So in some cases, I get paid to mentor, particularly around my expertise around professional relationships. It's a core part of my services. So there is a commercial benefit to me, a commercial transaction of mentoring. But I also mentor people quid pro quo. So, for example, I mentor a 17-year-old schoolgirl who wants to uh, is very passionate about a social justice campaign to support people who are bullied in school and other social issues. Those are, first of all, those are issues that I feel strongly about. So if I can help her to make an impact, that feels good to me. Secondly, she was badly bullied at a younger age. I went through that a lot longer ago than her. So for me, if seeing her turn that around and turn it into something positive is almost me supporting her is my chance to turn it into something positive for me as well, my experience. So there's that, and then just the simple pleasure you get of someone valuing your experience, your expertise, your insights, and taking it on board, reflecting on it, taking it seriously, and acting on it. There's nothing better in what I do than when someone turns around to me and says that my advice helped them and made a difference. So there's that as well. And then finally, sorry, long answer, but that means there's a lot of benefits to the mentor. Finally, paying it forward. I've had people mentor me in my career. I mentor people, and hopefully they will go on to mentor other people as well. Not all benefits have to be directly reciprocal.
It's the lineage of knowledge that you're building, right?
I like that.
And then having your lineage is a kind of basic instinct of every animal and every living being on this planet. Okay, so that's good. So why are they not paid generally?
I think it goes back to the last part of the last answer, which is paying it forward.
Mm.
So, when you are, and there is a challenge in this that I'll come back to, but when you are starting out in your career, people are there to help you and support you. When you are trying to achieve certain objectives, you want people to help you and support you. and in turn, you will, when you are able to help other people. The challenge I want to just reflect on is that it's easier for me to talk about paying it forward when you talk about that lineage, that's seniority. But as I've hinted at a couple of times, mentoring isn't purely around seniority and experience in that traditional sense. So it may well be that you have a reverse mentoring relationship where a millennial is mentoring someone, a baby boomer or Gen X, on the way younger generations think, or the digital, being a digital native, or AI, or sustainability, where they're closer to what common thoughts are and the way things are moving. So it doesn't have to always be about linear seniority, but what it is about is when I can contribute, I can contribute. And when I can seek support, I know that it's there for me as well. So that's why traditionally there's a lot of voluntary mentorship. And also organizations that ask you to mentor typically do so for one of two reasons. One, it's because that's the organization you work for and they want to upskill their employees and help them. A good example would be future talent. Identify future talent. These are the people that will be our senior management of the future. We want to enable them to reach their potential and to do so in a way that contributes their utmost potential to the company. So there's a selfish benefit, reason there, motive there, and you are paid for it because it's part of your job to do that. And that also boosts recruitment and retention for the organization, which is one of the biggest challenges facing organizations today. And then the other voluntary, organizationally driven motivation is charitable or community focused. So in the UK, we have the Prince's Trust, which is all about helping young people to be resilient, stand on their own 2 feet, overcome challenges, and mentorship will be part of that. That's a community driven reason to give back. There will be a lot of people who mentor women to help rebalance at senior levels. People from other underrepresented groups like people of color, Asian communities. And a lot of those mentors in those communities will be from that community. Sometimes they won't, but they'll be an ally to that community. And it's driven towards an ultimate goal. Not everything we do has to be driven by money.
I did speak to Ruth Gotian, who is the co-author of the book, guys, and I'll put the link of that interview somewhere up here, left or right. And I did speak to her because Ruth is from US and Andy's from UK, so you have like two different perspectives from across the pond. And I asked a couple of questions about the reverse mentoring and the seniority aspect that Andy you just mentioned. There's one very basic difference that I would like to know your perspective on is how different it is from coaching. I mean, if I need something, let's say if I want to be good at public speaking, do I need a coach or do I need a mentor?
I don't think it's either or.
Hmm.
It can be, and ideally it's both. And a good mentor will use coaching techniques as well. So I think there's two different distinctions there. And then we can throw in the cultural differences because you mentioned US and UK backgrounds. That comes into this question as well. So the basic difference, as I see it, between a coach and a mentor is a mentor has the expertise or the experience, the insights that you lack that will help you on the journey that you've identified. So a couple of examples: you want to get onto the board of directors and you get directed by you get mentored by a director. It works the other way around, doesn't it? You get directed by a mentor. You get mentored by a director who's been on that journey and can share with you what you need to do to get there.
Hmm.
Or you take my expertise, you want to gain more influence in a certain market and more visibility that you don't have at the moment. I might use my expertise as a professional relationships subject matter expert to work with you to navigate that new sector, that new market, and increase that influence and visibility. So there's an experience-based mentoring and there's an expertise-based mentoring relationship. A coach could also help you with both of those objectives. They could help you become a director. They could help you build that influence and visibility, but they may not have ever been a board director themselves. They don't have any personal insights and they may not be an expert on the topic. What they can do is they can ask the right questions. They can get you to open up and explore. They can help you. They can prod you. They can explore with you and help you find the answers for yourself. Now, going back to what I said before, what a good mentor will do would be if you come to me with your challenge, I instantly feel like I know the answer. but I still coach you. I still explore it, but I have that expertise in the background to bring in at the appropriate time if it remains appropriate in the context that you're looking at, because your needs, your journey might be slightly different to mine. So I have to be able to explore first rather than just give what worked for me will work for you. Then you
It's
get into the context US versus UK. So Ruth and I didn't differ on many things. There were a couple of things where we did debate it quite robustly and respectfully. And one of those areas is the American view is that mentors don't get paid, coaches do. And having had further conversations with other people in the US market, I think there is a different perspective of mentors and coaches in each country. So in the US, mentoring is purely voluntary and it tends to be seen with less credibility than coaching. In the UK, it can be paid, and I would say it seems to be treated with more reverence, and coaching maybe with less reverence. Although I think coaching has so many different levels to it that it's hard to generalize there. So there are nuances in the discussion, but that basic definition of the mentor has the experience and the expertise, the coach doesn't necessarily, but has the ability to ask the right questions. That's fundamentally the main point.
You can say that the coach teaches you skills, mentor teaches you experience.
Yeah, again, I would say there's nuance and grey areas
Okay.
within that.
Mm.
And actually, the coach doesn't necessarily teach you anything. The coach helps you find the answer.
Or is it the mentor who helps you find the answer?
Well, this goes back to my point that a good mentor will use coaching techniques, but
Right. Yeah,
they will
got it.
have the
Got it.
answer. That they will be closer to the answer than a
Mm.
coach may be. And we're generalizing here because a lot of good executive coaches come out of a corporate background, so they may have the experience. And so there's this huge gray area between the two.
So
But when you're buying coaching or mentoring, you're buying a specific thing.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So if I am going to look for a mentor for something that I want to work on, what kind of qualities I should be looking for in that person?
The most obvious thing is the experience or the expertise related to your challenge. Not just someone who you respect, although that's important, or who succeeded, but actually you feel they are equipped to give you the help and advice and support that you need. But I wouldn't stop there. And a lot of matching programs within organizations only look at that needs analysis. And I don't think that goes far enough. You want to know that there's some chemistry between the two of you. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean you have to be best friends. And actually, that might be counterproductive because if I like you too much, I'm going to spend too much time trying to impress you. I'm not going to open up. So I don't necessarily think you have to fall in love with each other. But what's important is that you respect each other. You need to respect your mentor and you need them to respect you. So I think that element of the chemistry is key. You then need to make a decision because for some people, it may make sense and it may be reassuring to have a mentor who understands the context within which you're operating. So, for example, if you are a Muslim and you have particular demands and stresses and challenges that come with being Muslim in a non-Muslim country, having a Muslim mentor means that they understand those restrictions. They're more sympathetic and they can support you. A lot of women will seek female mentors for obvious reasons. They're not always available. One of the people we talked to in the book, Professor Miranda Braun, when she started her career in the trading in investment banking, she wanted to work on the trading floor. She looked for a senior woman to support her. There was only one woman senior within the bank she could talk to, and that woman said, "Well, if you want to work on the trading floor, I've got no experience of that. You need a male mentor for that." So you need to weigh up if there are people with the right expertise or experience from your background who understand your world, your life, your particular challenges. How important is that to you versus having someone who's really going to push back and actually challenge that orthodox thinking within that space, within that context? We all live in bubbles. We all live in ideas bubbles, and if we surround ourselves with people who think the same way as us, who are conditioned in the same way as us, we're not going to get different perspectives. So we need cognitive diversity in our networks. So I think there's a trade-off between that reassurance versus that provocation of new ideas. So what's more important to me is value matching.
Mm.
Don't need the same opinions, don't need the same ideas, actually that's not necessarily helpful all the time. But what you need is the same values. So if someone doesn't share your values, then for me, that's a no straight away. But if they think completely differently to you and they've got a different view of where you should be going, of how you should approach it, that's good because it's provocative. It makes you think. You don't have to go with their advice, but you need people that can support you. Now that leaves you with a lot of either ors. But the beauty of mentoring is you don't have to have one mentor. You can have a mentoring team. I'm sure Ruth would have talked to you about this. So you can have, if you're a woman, you can have a female mentor, but you can also have a male mentor. And that's exactly what Miranda did. So you can have that reassurance, that understanding, but that provocation as well.
Yeah, we did speak about these things with Ruth, and talking about the context. Is it how different mentorship is in a professional, like corporate setup versus in an entrepreneurial or startup sort of setup? Or
I
it's just,
don't think there are huge differences if it's done the right way. My background in terms of delivering mentoring and also my client base is predominantly corporate. I do have entrepreneurial mentees, but predominantly my clients are working corporates. Um, but I'm a member of the Association of Business Mentors, the membership of which is predominantly business to business, i.e., working with entrepreneurs and mentoring entrepreneurs. I think that the key difference is, and it really depends again why people come into that mentoring relationship. It could be argued, you can hear the hesitation in my voice because I think it's so hard
Mhm.
to paint these generic pictures at times. But it could be argued that an entrepreneur might be more driven because they've got more riding on the outcome of that mentoring relationship. When you're running a business, if you change pivot and change course and so forth, there's everything riding on it. If you are part of a mentoring program that's put on by the people that employ you, I think it's a little bit easier to go through the motions. But I am hesitant in saying that because I don't want anyone to feel that I'm denigrating those people in internal programs. I've in both worlds, I've had people who are highly motivated, and I've had people where I wonder why are you wasting my time, let alone your own. So it's not everyone is like that in both. It really comes down, I think, more to personality type
Mm.
than the context in that case.
Yeah, and we did speak about value mismatch in the interview with Ruth, so I'll not repeat that. But that's one thing that a lot of people don't know their values. I don't know. They probably know, but they can't name it. If you ask them, they'd be like, "Oh, I don't know." Right?
They're a great people to speak to that topic better than I can.
Mm,
Um, and I'm always happy to recommend someone as a guest if you want to explore values. Um, uh, but to me, it is so important that you understand what makes you tick and what's important to you.
yeah.
If you, let's say, for example, one of your core values is family, and for you, time spent with your family is a major priority, and you have a mentor whose driving value is ambition and success, and they are therefore pushing you to work weekends and work evenings and work all hours and anything to get the job done. That's in conflict with your value of family. Now, a good mentor, if that comes up as a challenge, will have that discussion with you and start to, you want someone who's going to sense check your values as well as how you're responding to them, and to say, okay, I understand family is a value. If you were to invest your time now working this hard at the expense of your family, what does it mean in 5 years' time to that value of family? But if your values are so far disaligned, if misaligned, I think is the word, misaligned, that they don't understand that or get it, it's harder for them to poke in an empathetic way, in a constructive way.
Is there anything else other than the value alignment, misalignment rather, which challenges the mentor-mentee relationship?
Yeah, plenty. Um, I would say the number one issue in any mentoring relationship is a lack of clarity and focus. So, are you really clear about what you're trying to achieve and how your mentor can help you get there, what you expect from them? Are they clear about what you're trying to achieve? Have you looked at how you're going to measure progress? Are you reflecting on your progress on a regular basis, making sure you're on track? Do you need to change track, change course because of where your discussions have taken you? Without that, it becomes a nice conversation to have every now and then. So that to me is number one. Number two is ego, and it's both parties' ego. So the mentee needs to leave their ego at the door before they go in, because if you are too worried about impressing your mentor, something I touched on very briefly earlier when we were talking about rapport, if you're too eager to impress your mentor, and obviously that's a big danger where you're in within an organization and they're more senior than you, you're not going to open up. You're not going to be truly vulnerable, and you're not going to share where all of your doubts and your challenges and where you need help. So you can't. They don't know how to help you. You can't get the full potential out of that relationship. But equally, oh, sorry, just to stay with the mentee for a moment, you also need to be okay with blunt advice. It's it's no good having a mentor who's so worried about making you feel okay that they don't give you the truth. So I have a mentoring supervisor who's effectively a mentor for my mentoring. And every time we have a call, she opens it by asking me two questions, both on a scale of 1 to 10, where one is the lowest and 10 is the highest. How blunt and strong can she be with me on this call? How brutal and honest can she be? And the second one is, how much support do I feel I need in that process? So that if I'm feeling a little bit sensitive and fragile that day, I can say it and she can ease back. But we've got open communication. I'm normally 8 to 10 because I value strong feedback. I offered someone feedback last week, and he didn't take me up on it. Now there may be multiple reasons for that, but that's better than me offering weak feedback. You know, the praise sandwich, which has another less polite term. But you know, you've got lovely hair. Your presentation was an absolute disaster and a disgrace, but I like your smile. Yeah, it's just, to me, I understand the psychology behind it, but I struggle with it because I think that it's much more important that you get people who leave their ego at the door and are willing to receive feedback in the spirit in which it's given, which is, this is designed to make you better at what you want to get better at, not to call you out, not to make you feel small, not to say you're bad at anything, but you have to get into the mental space to receive that. If you're not, it means your ego's at play, and that mentoring relationship will struggle because you'll start to resent your mentor for the feedback they've given you, and it gets in the way. So that's ego for the mentee. For the mentor, it's equally important because, yes, the temptation remains that you might want to impress your mentee, sharing all your successes. It makes you feel good about yourself. But your mentee will learn more from your failures than from your successes, quite possibly. And they will engage with you. Your message will be more resonant if you share where you got things wrong. In the book, I share a study from Harvard Business School that shows the impact of a message if that message is a message of success is interspersed with challenge and failure on the way versus just a pure message of success. And it clearly showed high levels of what they call benign envy. I want to be like you, if there was failure interspersed in that message, versus high levels of malicious envy. I want you to fail, if it was purely success. So the mentor has to be vulnerable, leave their ego at the door as well, to really ensure that their mentee can connect with them, because otherwise we're putting ourselves on a pedestal, want to come off it and join them. And actually, I was running a webinar I mentioned earlier for learning leaders yesterday. And at the beginning, I asked them about the person who made the biggest impact on them in their career to date and why they did so. And one of the participants said, it's because they shared their failures and I realized they were actually like me, so I could achieve what they've achieved. So if our ego gets in the way of that, we're not going to connect. Our message won't be resonant, and the relationship can fail on that as well. So that's two reasons to give you starters: clarity and focus, and ego.
I think that's why probably we needed a book on mentorship, a comprehensive guide. And the reason I'm saying it is, the feedback that you mentioned just now, giving feedback and taking feedback. And it is so difficult when you go and tell somebody that, oh, you didn't do this right. The first instinct of that person who is receiving end will be to justify whatever they have done. Right? Oh, no, I wanted to do like this, so that, right? And it's very difficult to just receive, the feedback without counter argument, putting some counter arguments to it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So can I just say on that?
Yeah.
For years, I've run mastermind exercises in a lot of my talks, and I have talks on masterminding. And in fact, it's taken from mastermind groups that I've been in over the years. For those that haven't come across it, masterminding is effectively it's peer group mentoring, where one person shares a challenge and a group of people, through a structured agenda, seek to find solutions. And there are different stages to it, and there are rules in those stages. And the final stage is when that group offers suggestions and solutions. And the rule during that stage is that, let's call them the mentee, the person in the hot seat, the person with the challenge, can only use two words in response. And
Thank you.
I always say they can use either, neither, or both, and in any order. But the only two words they can use are thank and you.
You exactly.
Because it's so tempting to jump in with rebuttal, with reasons why not.
Yeah.
We never say reasons why, always reasons why not. We need to, if anyone's read The Chimp Paradox by Professor Steve Peters, or Sumo by Paul McGee, they both make this point about that monkey part of our brain, the limbic node, I think it is, limbic system, that is faster to respond than anything else. And it's the one that sees fear and reacts to fear. It's that fight or flight mode. And we need to tamper that down to give the rest of our brain the chance to catch up and process the information before we respond. And that's why thank you is so important.
It is. And mentees also, I mean, we talked about mentors to have qualities, but mentees also have to have the qualities to receive. I know it sounds very simple that, yeah, wonder what's wrong. Everybody will be able to receive it. As you mentioned, it's so difficult to say thank you when you have 10 different arguments to tell the person that your feedback doesn't make sense. Correct. Okay. Yeah.
So just on that, I had a guest on my podcast, Daniela Landher, who's a former senior talent leader with Google. And she came up with a wonderful phrase. I've used it, shared it so many times. It's in the book. But she talked about, she said, we've got IQ, we've got EQ. What about LQ? Learning quotient. And she said, we need to move from wanting to be the smartest person in the room to be the one who learns the most. And to me, that is so powerful.
Learning, and it's difficult to learn in a different way because we have been programmed to learn in a certain way based on our educational background or whatever. So now, I mean, this new term that is becoming very popular is unlearn, right? So first you
Yes.
unlearn what you have learned, then you write on a blank slate,
Yeah.
and that's how you go. Any example, that case studies rather, you can give, Andy, where somebody who's a mentee or even mentor personally transformed with the relationship of this kind? Any
Well,
example, or anything that really went so bad that they will never find a mentor again?
well, let's go with the opening story in the book. Nicole Stott, who works for NASA, used to watch all of the astronauts go out on space missions and never thought that could be her. And it was her mentor who said, why not put the application in? And it's as simple as that. It's having, it was really interesting. The exercise I mentioned yesterday on the webinar with the learning leaders, who's had the biggest impact on your career and why? I'd say 80% of the responses were someone who believed in me because
Mm.
they showed belief in me, because they felt I could do it. That's Nicole's story. So to me, and the book is full of case studies, but that's a standout one because it's so simple. And I'm sure a lot of people listening could relate to that, to having that imposter syndrome, that belief that that step isn't for them. It's not for people like me. And having someone else to say, well, actually, I think you can do it and I think you should do it, and driving them on to do so.
What's your top tip to overcome imposter syndrome? We've spoken about it twice, I think. So,
We got 10 of them in the book. um, Probably, as I say, we've got 10. We interviewed Caroline Flanagan, a lawyer who specializes in this, for the book. My one is probably the one that springs to mind right now, and it make a lot of sense given the topic of this podcast, is surround yourselves with people that can um, challenge your thought processes. And this happened in the last few days when we've put together a video series I'm really proud of to accompany the launch of the book. We've got a number of top experts from around the world, thought leaders, authors, professors, senior executives, who have shared their insights and experiences of mentoring for us, and we'll be releasing those over a period of time. And we sent the video series out to everyone just to give their approval for what the final version. And one of them came back to me and said, could you just remove this answer? I'm not happy with it. And I watched it 3 times. And I went back to her twice. First time I said, are you sure you want to remove it? I think it's great. And she said, no, I'm not happy with it. Please remove it. I said, fine. I watched it again. I went back to her. I said, I will completely respect your request, and I will remove this if you want me to. But I just want to check this with you again. And I gave her about 3 reasons it should stay in. The value it would give other people, the way she had shared the story that made it really relatable, and actually the way it positioned her as well, which I thought was to her benefit.
Mm.
And I said, look, feel free to run it past someone else that you trust, but I would urge you to keep it in. I will take it out. And, luckily it's in one of the longer videos, so it wouldn't negatively impact the series in that way. And she came back and she said, if you say so, then yeah, let's keep it in. And I went back and I said, I'm so pleased that you trust me on this. And she said, yeah, I can be prone to perfectionism sometimes. But, I think we are our own worst critics. And that's part of imposter syndrome. I'm not good enough. That's not good enough. I need to do better. And sometimes we need other parties, whether it's a formal mentor, whether it's, as in this case, you could classify that as informal mentorship or just a friendly chat, but someone to say, no, actually, what you've done is really good.
Mm. Something similar happened with Brené Brown. It's not about imposter syndrome, it's about showing vulnerabilities. And when she's been teaching vulnerability related stuff for ages, and until she gave this TED talk where she spoke with vulnerability herself. And
Yeah.
when she watched it, she was like, take it down. I don't want this video to be on internet. And
And it's one of the best TED Talks out there.
exactly, it's like the top 10 or top 15 TED Talks.
But actually, not just in rankings, it is one of the best
It
TED
is,
Talks
yeah,
I've ever
exactly.
seen.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Quite related stuff. Is there any okay, there are two things I wanted to ask. And because you have written a book about Just Ask, right? Is that the name of the book?
Yes.
Just Ask.
Just ask, yeah.
If somebody wants to make a, I don't know, very busy executive, his or her mentor, like CEO of a company, I want to make them my mentor. How do I reach out?
Okay, so this is one of the other areas where Ruth and I had a slight difference of opinion. So Ruth feels that you should never ask anyone to be your mentor,
Hmm.
um, uh, certainly not formally. And Dory Clark, a very well-known leadership thinker, agrees with that. Um, I differ. I have asked and I've been asked. Uh, I have said no. I have been told no. Um, and I think as long as you position it the right way, it's fine. But I also completely understand where Ruth and Dory are coming from, and others who feel that way. If people are really busy, it's a big ask. So, I mean, I have been asked by people I don't know, and at least once I've said yes because it just felt right in the moment. You have to be prepared for to be let down in that case. Um, and it is better to build the relationship with them first. So my concession to Ruth and Dory's approach is maybe don't ask straight out for them to be your mentor, but ask them for their advice and insights. Make them an informal mentor; they don't even realize they're mentoring you. And then when you get it, go back to them and share what you've done with it and what it's led to, and start the conversation and get to a point where they naturally are happy to mentor you without even realizing they're doing so. And a lot of that is about the relationship between you. The more invested they are in you, the more they'll be willing to reply to you in situations like that. So it depends whether you know them in the first place, how you've got to know them, and the opportunities you have to engage with them. If they're active on social media, start by raising your profile with them. Engage intelligently with their content. And by that, I don't mean just click like every time they post something, but show, I've had people like a video that I put up within 30 seconds of putting it up when the video is 3 minutes long. You can't like it. It's just not possible. Um, so show that you've engaged with it, ask intelligent questions. And most people will be flattered by that and they will appreciate that. And that gets you on their radar. And particularly if you ask intelligent questions, that's someone you want to support. So I would build it block by block. Um, if you do ask outright people to be your mentor, be okay with a no and communicate to them that it's okay to say no. And Robert Cialdini, who wrote Influence the Power of Persuasion, talks about if you ask for something big and someone says no, they're more likely to give you something smaller. So it may be you ask them to be your mentor, but that makes it easier when they say no to say, could I reach out every now and then if I've got a particular question? And they're more likely to respond because that's human nature will make us want to.
Yeah, it's the main aim of the relationship is to learn, and if you can just learn it without naming it as mentor-mentee, then why not? Yeah, what's wrong?
I would say the advantages of a formal relationship are the primary one is accountability. That not only are they going to answer your questions, but they are going to be there for you to meet up with again to say, how did you get on with that? If you reach out to me and say, can I ask your advice? I give you my advice and I carry on with my life. But if you've then got an appointment with me the next month, and I'm going to say to you, what did you do after our conversation last month? That holds you more accountable to take action, and it gives you the opportunity to reflect with them on how it went. So I think there are advantages to formal mentoring, and that's where I'll depart from Ruth and Dory, because I do think that plays a big role in it.
Mm.
But I also take on board what they say. It's a big ask of someone, and you've got to be okay with the no, and you've got to make them comfortable with that when you ask.
Okay, this is really interesting. In the interest of time, I'll have to ask you my last question. I wanted to ask a few more. Maybe we can take one more quick. Are there any trends in the mentorship kind of world now versus what wasn't there 10 years ago or something like that?
Did you say any brands?
Trends, trends,
Oh, friends.
trends, Trend, trends,
Oh, trends. Sorry,
trends.
I wasn't quite catching it. Are there any trends in the mentoring world? Well, it's interesting. I think, and I think this goes back to an earlier answer. I know I had this conversation earlier today, so apologies if I get confused. I'm pretty sure we talked about this briefly earlier. You asked me why the book was for mentors, rather than mentees. I think there is a trend towards taking mentoring more seriously.
Mm.
I am seeing more organizations put a more robust mentoring program together than I've seen in the past. There is more thought going into the matchmaking, uh, the matchmaking between mentor and mentee, um, rather than just the first mentor to volunteer gets matched with the first mentee to put themselves forward. So there is a growth in software that actually does that matching process for you and weighs various things up and seeks that feedback on how it's going and so forth. So I think that technologically there's progress there. Uh, I think organizations are more robust about it. It's hard for me to decipher how much of that is happening across the market generally and how much is increased awareness of it on my part, because I've been writing a book about it for the last couple of years. That's naturally going to color my experience personally of that space. Reverse mentoring we've touched on a few times. I think that is going to become more and more prominent. And I'm having more conversations with organizations who have shadow boards. Now, traditionally, shadow boards were about equipping the next generation of leaders to understand how a board operates. But I'm having more conversations where the shadow board is being used as a reverse mentoring process where they talk to the board leaders about their perspective and what's happening in the organization from where they're at. So I think there's an increase in that. Um, and allied to that, I'm hearing the term reciprocal mentoring come up more and more. So I don't think we've even got it in the book, but it's come up more and more
What is
since.
it called?
Reciprocal.
Reciprocal. Okay.
So that's where if I'm partnered with you and you're a senior person in the organization and I'm junior, you'll mentor me, but I'll reverse mentor you. So we're mentoring both ways.
Yeah.
So I think there's an increase in that. So those are some of the key things that stand out for me as trends.
Okay. Thank you. And last question, which I ask everybody here, and it's a kind of surprise question, and it's not related to mentorship. And the question is, what, according to you, are the top 3 skills that everyone needs in order to be happy and successful, but schools are not teaching?
Curiosity when it comes to schools. Now, I don't have kids. I'm not in tune with what schools are teaching now. And obviously, different countries approach education from a different perspective. When I was at school, rote learning was the key thing, being able to regurgitate facts and figures and arguments for an exam. And I still hear a lot of politicians in the UK talking about how great that is. I don't think that fosters curiosity. I don't think it fosters problem solving. I don't think it fosters collaborative
Mm.
approaches to solving challenges. So for me, the ability to be curious and to collaborate with other people to find solutions is absolutely key. Clear, concise communication, being able to present your ideas in a way that people really understand them in all forms. We touched at the very beginning about making presentations, which a lot of people struggle with. But then you've also got being able to communicate in a conversation like this. The book that you mentioned at the beginning, And Death Came Third, which was the one, it's about how to network and how to speak in public, because they were the two biggest fears in the New York Times survey on social anxiety.
Death was
Death came
third.
third. And we need to prepare kids for that. going forward. So that clear and concise communication is really important. That ability to present your ideas. And then third, so I'm going to have three key skills.
You've done three: collaboration, curiosity.
Okay, so I put those together. So I'd build connectivity in as
Yeah.
well. The ability to
Okay.
connect and build networks. That's what I
Great.
teach. I have to say
Great.
that.
Thank you very much, Andy. Thank you for sharing all this. And I think this was a really insightful conversation. So thank you very much for your time, Andy. I really appreciate it. And guys, if you have reached here and you found some value, which I'm sure you have, then do consider subscribing to this channel. I will see you again in another, maybe a couple of weeks' time or next week. Up until, you take care and keep learning.